Excuse me. I don't suppose you'd like a cup of tea, would you? I'm a filmmaker.
Oh, no, wait.
And what I do is I go around and I make people cups of tea.
That sounds so lovely right now.
And then I make a little film about it, if you're down for it.
I would love that.
Okay, thank you. What's your name?
Simran.
Simran, I'm Will.
That's so kind of you, Will.
How's your day going, Simran?
Yeah, it's going okay, thank you. Had a very good start and then a slightly stressful continuation because work,
Why?
you know. Just having some conflict with a colleague who I think is very stressed at the moment. And trying to work out how to communicate with them well, which is a lot.
Yeah. How do you resolve conflict like that?
I guess I try to listen.
Yeah.
A lot. I'm very careful about trying to make sure I'm not like hurting other people. So I'll be very, very reflective. I'll like go back over and be very careful about what I've done.
Do you want tea? Or
I would
coffee?
love tea. Please, thank you.
Yeah.
Tea is everything. Yeah.
So what's your job, Simran?
I work in content, for an IVF clinic, a fertility clinic.
Oh wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's nice. The joke we make is that we're selling babies, which isn't true. We're just helping people understand, like, all the clinic focuses on LGBTQ people and, like, basically fertility stuff for queer people.
Oh,
which
amazing.
Is really cool, because I grew up queer and didn't really think I'd be able to have kids. So it's really nice working somewhere where a lot of what we do is talking about how queer people can have kids.
Can I ask, do you have kids?
No.
Not yet.
No. Maybe in a few years.
Yeah. I guess it's
yeah.
amazing to like through that, like seeing, you must be like helping change people's lives.
Yeah, the doctors do that and the scientists do that. We're just like on social media doing stuff. But yeah.
1 second, let me just.
This is so lovely. Thank you.
Oh no,
so much.
it's a sweet little project. It's a big step today. I actually quit my job.
No way.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's huge.
I quit my job.
What was your job?
I work for a YouTuber.
Oh, cool.
And this has done very well. And
Amazing.
I was like, I need to go full time on it.
That's
and
so
I don't know how I'm going to
exciting.
make it work. But you know, when you're like,
Yeah.
life is going to take it somewhere, and we'll
will.
see where it goes.
That's so exciting. Congratulations.
So
my God.
yeah, I don't know how it's going to go, but like I post them on Instagram, and they're like little
Yeah.
Instagram series.
That's
And
yeah.
like they've kind of like So thank you very much for.
No, thank you for the cup of tea.
How strong do you like your tea? By the way?
Quite strong. It's good.
Quite strong.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Just
Yeah.
a dash, or?
Strong but with lots of milk.
Oh, okay.
It's nice.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
thank
give you a spoon as well.
Oh,
One
that's
second.
great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a bit of a yapper, so
Yeah,
I found the right person.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So, one sec. Let me just. I'm terrible at multitasking, Simran.
No.
So
worries.
let
Take your
me just grab the little pot. So when did you like start working there? Like, what was the?
Sorry, this is so great. The teaspoons in the top, very hygienic.
You've got to have it. You've got to have the hygiene.
Yeah. I feel in very safe hands.
There you are. That's a
thank you
spoon
so
for
much.
No. Thank you for saying yes. Sometimes I
Thank you
do
for the cup of
this,
tea.
and I have to go. I have to talk to so many people,
Yeah.
and it takes. it's just endless, and it's.
Completely. But people are slightly, not in a bad way, but on the defensive in London, right?
Yeah.
Just for understandable reasons. Like, I get it. Did you grow up in London?
I grew up in Brighton.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
that's
No.
good.
Which have you always lived in London?
Yeah, I grew up in West London and then went to uni an hour outside of London and then ran straight to East London and now live there.
No, you live there. So with this project, I always start it with the same question, and it's, what is your most memorable cup of tea, Simran, in your life?
Oh, that's such a good question. That's such a good question. Can I have one in the UK and one in India? Is that
Yeah.
allowed? Can I have two?
Yeah.
Because so I grew up in London, but my family's from India, and I think probably the most memorable cup of tea I had, no doubt. So in September/October, I went to India with a couple of friends who also grew up in like UK and Ireland, also South Asian, also queer, and it was like a big trip, travelling around. We flew into Mumbai, where one of my closest friends, he grew up there till he was like 1 or 2, has family there. It was like long flight overnight, I think. and then got to his family's place in Mumbai, like quite near the centre. Don't know if you've ever been. It's like a very intense city.
I've been to Delhi, but I've not been to Mumbai.
It's similar. It's a bit less hectic, but
Okay.
it's pretty hectic.
Yeah.
And we just like went into their flat, which is their house, like which is their family's house, and it's been there for years and years and years. And they've always lived there. And his aunt just like sat us all down, and obviously straight away made us a cup of like proper Indian cha, like proper Indian tea.
Oh my god!
And
Like
it
the
was
spicy.
Yeah,
Like,
well, you know, actually no, because it was more like South Indian style, and
Okay.
she didn't. And sometimes people put like masala cha is when you put spices in it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And sometimes you can just make it like you just boil it with lots of milk and you make it really strong. And it was just like that, no spice at all, I think.
Yeah.
But just like sitting there in India, having like just got to Mumbai with these friends of mine on this like really exciting trip, and his lovely, lovely aunt was just there like welcoming us in. Oh, it was so special. And in the UK, probably at my birthday party 2 years ago, I always just have everyone over in the flat, and I cook like a massive thing. Like last year before, I made a huge thing of shahi paneer, like a really rich paneer dish, and like some dal, I think, like huge pans, massive. And my mum was there, my boyfriend was there helping me cook everything. They got on really well, which was really nice. And then I made a huge pot of really strong masala cha, like spicy tea. And then once like mum had gone home, and we always do like a sort of meditation, like a kind of spiritual bit. Once that was over, I like poured like half a bottle of whiskey into it. And that's what I do every single year. And that's like the turning point of the party, when it goes from the like afternoon, like non-drinking, more relaxed, you know, not everyone likes drinking, to the like big messy night out. A masala cha with whiskey, loads of sugar, it's so good. What I do is I do something in the afternoon and something in the evening on the same day, on a weekend,
Okay,
obviously.
yeah.
And I like that because I want to have a whole big birthday thing, and I want it to feel like it's a whole day. And it's kind of like almost like office hours in a sense, like you can come whenever you want.
Yeah.
I sometimes do a big Google form when it says like which part are you coming from, so I know like how much food to make, how much tea to make, there's one friend of mine who is a really interesting person. He's amazing. He just moved to Kyiv in Ukraine like a year ago.
Wow.
Doing really amazing work. But he normally, when he's in London, like this year.
I'm the tea guy.
Oh my god, I watched your TikTok.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
That's so lovely.
it's I only started it a month ago.
That's amazing that people are already
I know,
recognizing
it's
you
a bit
like that.
wild.
I once saw the guy in the tube. Do you know the one who does those like fake
Francis
announcements?
Bourgeois.
No, not him. I know who you mean though. He's this guy with like a loudspeaker, and he pretends that he'll be like, no straight people kissing on the tube is allowed. Like no,
Oh,
and then
okay,
people
yeah,
will be like,
yeah, yeah,
and jump
yeah,
away,
yeah,
or like,
yeah.
oh no cats allowed on the tube or whatever. He does these
Yeah.
like silly announcements, then
He's-
people realise it's him. I once saw him. Yeah.
No, I don't. I find it very weird. It's a project that sort of. To be honest, I was going to do for the first bit. I was actually going to release it, so I was going to just do it all myself and keep it all very.
Yeah, that makes
And then I
sense.
posted the first one, and it sort of
Did it really take
flew,
off? Well,
which is lovely. It's such a
congratulations.
lovely thing to do.
And then a month later, you've quit your job.
I quit my job. Yeah.
That's so exciting.
And I have a really good relationship with my. We're gonna come back to your birthday
Yeah.
party.
No, there's no
Well,
rush,
this
there's time.
could go
Yeah,
wherever.
yeah.
But like, I have a really good relationship with my boss.
Yeah.
I really get on with him. I really respect him. I've learned a lot from him. But sometimes in life you get given a dream and you're like, just
Totally.
gotta take it.
Absolutely.
So. Like the fact that people are like running down here and coming up and going, "Are you the tea guy?"
That's amazing. You should be really proud of yourself. That's
Thank you.
It shows that you're making something people want to see. Yeah.
But it's the fact of going to have like a chat and like having a good like conversation, and like sometimes you just see someone, you're like, right, I'm gonna go up and ask them, and like it's a complete lucky day when the first person says yes.
Was I the first person?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
no
I
way.
was like,
Yeah.
this is brilliant, this is amazing,
Yeah.
and I'm so thankful. So
No, thank you. I mean, you've literally given me a beautiful, huge cup of tea, which is exactly what I needed right now. So thank you. Yeah.
So take me back to what part were we at before the you're talking about the party and you're talking about the
Yes. Yeah.
the whiskey, and then
That's
the
it.
fact that you've got the Google form and all of these
Yeah.
things. It's amazing.
I was saying about this friend of mine who always goes to Ambala, which is like a small chain of, they do like Indian sweets and like snacks and stuff, like samosas and stuff like that. And he lives in Shadwell, and I've always lived like up around Hackney in various places. So he's always like coming up, and we'll always go through Whitechapel and buy like a huge box of Ambala samosas, which are like the best samosa you can buy, in my opinion, or give or take. Yeah, and it's like become part of the ritual, and then like a few friends will come early to help cook and set up. I'm quite controlling in the kitchen. I'm very specific with how.
Why?
I get
How are
things
you
done.
controlling?
I just have a very, very clear sense of how I want things to taste and the process. And a lot of Indian food requires, like, at least, or Punjabi food, in my understanding, requires you to be like, it's all about like layering flavors at different stages.
Yeah.
So you need to be careful about like what temperature are you frying this spice at, and what temperature you're frying this one at, and what goes in when there's oil and what goes in when there's water, and like how do you layer everything right. And when you're hosting all of the people you care about, or like a lot of people you care about, like, you know, it's got to be right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've relaxed a bit in recent years, maybe a little bit.
Have you always enjoyed cooking then?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed cooking. My mum talks about how when I was little, my favourite toy was one of those like Fisher-Price oven things where you know have like plastic food and you put it in. Yeah. Have you always enjoyed making cups of tea?
Have I
like,
always-
what has tea meant to you?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, because it must mean a lot.
Tea has now clearly come a lot to my life. My favourite, like when I ask the question, what's the most memorable cup of tea, the first thing that comes up is my gran. And she's a very creative, like, lady. Very inspiration. Like she does these woody pictures, right? Where she makes like these sheep's woody pictures, and they are like they're amazing. Like she lives on a farm, and what she does is she makes her woody pictures, and it's sort of like these pictures are just beautiful, right? And she's been doing them for the last few years, like 50 ever since I don't know whenever she started, and she dyes the sheep's wool and stuff. And for me, my most memorable cup of tea is like being young, sat there, smelling the smell of like sheep's wool and that smell of like the farm, and having a cup of tea with her. The milk's a little bit off, and, and I think for me, tea's like saying similar to you, is like that sharing ability, right? Like it's like the ability to share and to have that conversation, or that dark, like sometimes I don't know, a dark conversation or whatever it is, but it's that openness to have a tea, isn't it?
Completely. Like, I think what captures, and my partner and I moved in together recently.
How's that going?
Beautifully, really well. It's an adjustment. You're learning to live in different ways, but it's been so wonderful.
Can I ask how you guys met?
Well, we met on the internet.
Okay.
Let's say, and that's as much information as I might be able to share on that one. But you can fill in the details.
How did your like love story to develop to like, well, as much as PC as you can say?
Well, it's all very PC. Let's say, but no, we actually first started talking like kind of during COVID. I was living in London Fields, he was working in Haggerston, and then like we just never met up, nothing ever came of it. And we always say that was kind of for the best, that we weren't really it wasn't the right time for us to meet each other. And then like we met then a couple of years later, about 2 years ago now, we met on one of the apps, we met on another one of the apps, and we were like, oh, we'll just go for a drink.
Yeah.
Hugh was in LA for work, and then was coming back through New York. The reason why I share this is that in New York he went to his favourite, like a queer bookshop or something, or like a queer cafe / bookshop, I think, and he bought this book which is about cruising and the law, and like kind of like I guess like queer spaces and queerness in public space, stuff like this. And he was really enjoying this book. He did a master's in queer history as well. It's one of the things he really cares about. And then to our first date, I was 45 minutes late. And in my defence, I was working.
That's the worst,
yeah, it's
isn't
really bad. And in my defence,
Why did he wait for?
Because he was in this pub, he was off work at the time, and he was reading this book that he'd bought in New York.
Oh
so
my
he was
gosh.
like, you know what? Oh, it's fine. I've got my book. I've got a pint. Like, I'll just sit here in this nice pub. Like, nice one. This one. So,
Why were you late?
I was just late because I was late. Because despite my best, what I said at the time was, because you knew I used to work in mental health with young people. I used to work for charity, and I said like, oh, I'm sorry, there was like a safeguarding thing with one of the young people I'm working with. Like, I'm late. And that was like kind of true. Like there kind of was a safeguarding thing with it, but also like I wasn't the only person responsible for it. And I also I used to edit mental health resources with young people. It was like research. It wasn't like providing directly mental health support. So it was kind of stretching the truth. It was half true. It was sort of true. I probably shouldn't admit to that. Whatever.
Yeah.
And then also I was like, it was a really long day, and I was like, I need to eat something before I go on this date, because we're going to be drinking, and then we were like going out to this bar after, let's say. Yeah, I was kind of just late because I'm late. But yeah, and then it just all, I don't know. He says that the reason that when I walked in, what like first made him think that like maybe this could be something, like, because before it was just casual, right? That it could be something. Was I was wearing this blue, it's like a chore jacket, like an that the same kind of jacket that guy's wearing. Do you see with the like deep blue? Just
Yeah,
right
yeah,
across the
yeah,
road,
yeah.
kind of like that. Same
Cool,
sun
very
jacket.
cool.
Like but I just love it, that colour
Yeah.
as well. And he really liked that. But he works in fashion, and like I don't know, like clicked something for him. And then as soon as we sat down, I started, I guess, like yapping and also asking him loads of questions about what he was reading, because I work as a writer, and my own writing is about like mostly like queerness and cruising, and I guess like more transgressive queer spaces. Like, why do people go to like cruising spaces and raves and like sex clubs? Like what? Like why? What's really the why?
Yeah.
And he was like, wow,
That's awesome.
let's I want to hear. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
a really cool thing to be writing about.
It excites me a lot, because I think it's a huge scene, right? Like parties, like all kinds of like the darker world, like the kind of chemsex world, right? But also like there's all of these sex clubs and venues and spaces and like raves, and there's these like person of colour run parties with dark rooms and all this stuff. And it's been like, you see like media coverage of it and like alternative media, and you see films being made about it. But like, I just think there's more stories that need to be told. And also as like I came up through poetry, that was the kind of first like career I built myself really.
What's it? Tell me.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many things I want to ask you about Simran.
Yeah.
Like, you are fascinating. First of all, poetry.
Yeah.
Tell me what poetry does to you. What is it? What is for poetry? Because I think it's such a beautiful art form.
Yeah.
My sister's a poet.
No way.
Well, like she's a wannabe poet.
Everyone is a poet. No such thing as a wannabe poet. I'm sorry to interrupt.
And I've got this like idea that I keep on telling her, and I'm like, you need to, because like I'm meeting doing these cuts of teas, right? And I'm like, you need to write a poem about each person I meet for a cup of tea, and then we're gonna make a little poetry book. Because she's got such a talent for it. Like poem, I'm speaking too much here, but like I'm telling you, like I feel like poetry is like a form of feeling. But what for you is like the reason you love poetry?
I love that. For me, poetry is 100%, and it can sometimes sound a bit cheesy, but like 100%, it's like community, and I really mean that in a very real sense. Poetry for me was really this program called this program called Barbican Young Poets. But Barbican Young Poets is this wonderful program run by two like brilliant I guess like London-based writers, Jacob Sam-LaRose, Rachel Long, and they've built this space within the Barbican. I think it's been 20 years, maybe nearly 30 years, where they like find young writers from like really like varied backgrounds. A lot of people who don't like feel like poetry is for them, or like the institution is for them, or like literature is for them, and are basically like, no, this is for you. Like you deserve this, and like you deserve to be able to like craft your work in ways that really matter. And it's less about teaching, in my experience, although there's a lot of teaching, brilliant teaching. It's more about building this community. There's a group chat I have from the Barbican Young Poets program 2017-2018, which is still pinging off every single day. And we're all like talking to each other and looking after each other, turning up to each other's gigs, or like lots of us have lived with each other, or we're helping each other with our, like some of us are novelists now, and some of us are filmmakers, and some of us like work in just totally other fields. Some of us make video games, and like we all just, or some of us aren't like making like art in any way at all, but are living our lives and doing whatever we're doing, and we genuinely are there for each other.
Yeah.
And like it's real community, like community that shows up.
That's cool, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. And poetry for me has always been that, like showing up to each other's gigs. I think poets often, the joke is that poets like publish pamphlets and push the same £5 note around the table, right? But I think poets are the engine of culture, or one of the engines of culture in this city. Like poetry creates like makers and writers who then go on and maybe become poets, or maybe become so many other things.
Tell me more, that is such a beautiful analogy. Tell me more about like how poetry is the engine of the city. And
so
where
it's a
do you
big
come,
claim. Yeah.
And like,
So I think there are definitely loads of engines of culture in the city, right? Like lots and lots. And I wouldn't want to say poetry is the only one, but I think it's a really important one. I think so many of the writers who are so like influential today, and especially like increasingly in this generation, as there are more and more communities for like queer poets, poets of colour, working class poets, poets from, you know, like who are normally excluded from like that kind of Faber literary institution thing, although many of them are in that institution now and are doing amazing stuff, right? There's this amazing novelist / filmmaker / music producer / events community builder. Her name's Tajer Chin. Love her. She wrote this novel called Keeping the House, and it's so good. It's about I guess like the North London Turkish Cypriot community. It's about women, it's about being queer in London, it's about your relationship with your mother. It's also about smuggling heroin into the country hidden in cabbages.
Yeah.
It's great, right?
Okay.
She's a wonderful friend of mine who I met through poetry, right? And she came up as a poet and then decided that, I don't know exactly what drove her to switch over. I know for me, the reason for moving from poetry to like the novel form is mostly poets read poetry, give or take. But loads of people read novels because I think it's just a form of storytelling that maybe is more accessible, or there's like more roots into it, or it's just like more widespread, and whatever, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I think poets often, there's so many poets who like develop their ideas and develop their like, even their like political radicalism and their like vision for what art can be through these like beautiful little pockets of like performance and writing and crafting and whatever it is. Like I once had 3 phone calls over the course of an afternoon about a single comma, and then it became a line break anyway. We didn't even have a comma in the end. And it's that kind of like dedication to your craft that I learned from my poetry mentors. That was Jacob Samler-Rose. He's amazing. He's supported so many people.
Yeah.
That's the craft that then allows me to go to a workshop about plotting a novel and be like, oh, I get what she's saying. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay, that clicks. Like, and like I can like kind of soak it up and make sense of it. Yeah, I also think poets generally work in multidisciplinary ways because we work on the page and we work like in performance. I resisted saying on the stage there because the rhyme was a bit too much, right? But and I think often we then get excited about helping, like making other people see that poetry is for them, and we're like, well, is the way to make people see that poetry is for them through a book of poetry, or is it through a novel? A wonderful friend of mine just submitted the manuscript of it's like a novel in verse, and I haven't read it, but I know that it's kind of about growing up, I think especially as like a queer Tamil person in London. And like, it's a novel, it's also poems. Like, poets run around everywhere else and do...
Is there...
Yeah.
Is there... No, like... No, don't say sorry. And the passion for poetry is beautiful. I guess, is there a deep underlying drive for your poetry? Like, for you, like... For me, like film, like let me tell you about me and filmmaking.
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm terrible at writing and I'm terrible at blah blah blah. But for me, I can put something in and edit, and I can edit, and I can suddenly feel understood. And like for me, that's like a form of understanding in this world where like I'm terrible at. I've always been terrible at exams, but then give me a video camera and give me someone's story, and like hopefully like, I'll do your story with justice. Like I can't like I love to cut it together and stuff. And I guess for you, is there a deep underlying drive for your poetry? And
completely.
Where does that come from? And like, is there something about like being understood? I don't know. What is?
That's such a good question. It's hard. In the last couple of years, I've written less poetry, and I'm working on a novel. Right. It's a very poetic novel, and that was a decision because I felt like I couldn't reach the people I wanted to reach and tell the people I want to tell those stories to. Like storytelling, making art for me isn't just about making something. It's about like any kind of speech. It's about communication. Like a poem isn't something in a room for no one to see. Like a poem is something with an audience, and it's like a way of connecting with people and talking to each other, right? That's what I love about poetry in particular. A friend of mine defined theatre as like, maybe this comes from somewhere, I don't know, but like something that could only ever happen in that room on that night with those people on the stage and those people in the room. And that's what makes theatre so exciting. And like everything else you could probably do in a novel, or you could do in this, or you could do in that. But like that's what makes theatre exciting, what happens between those people. I think I became a poet because it felt like a form that was quite free, and there was a lot of things that I felt like I needed to say. I think primarily to do with growing up and like having a lot of suffering, I think, around being a queer person and being a person of colour, and like, you know, navigating that, but also just life and family and all that stuff. I think poetry was a way to like speak, and to let different parts of me speak that didn't find it easy to speak in other ways. And then I think I fell in love with the craft of it. And I fell in love with having people around me who loved the craft too, and that's where Barbican Young Poets came in. I remember being on the train home from the first year I did it. I was really young. I was like 18, 19, but I felt very young. And one of the people who runs the programme was catching the same train. I was going back to uni, and she was going back she lived in Henley, I think, it was the same train out of town. And we like rush like through the central town from Barbican, Liverpool Street, whatever. And I was talking to her about how much I love translation and how I think translation's really exciting and beautiful, and there's all kinds of stuff in it. And like, she was like, oh, so do you think your first book might be translations? And I was shocked because I was like, the fact that you think I could, it's just casual to you, the idea that I could write a book, and the idea that that book could be translations, and you're like, your first book. Like for her, it was no doubt. She was like, yeah, of course. Like, well, do you think your first book might be that? And like that faith she had in me, I still got, I'm tearing up. It means a lot to me. I still think about that. And that made me take myself seriously as a writer and an artist and someone who could like make stuff. And like make stuff in like, to like connect with other people, right? Like, I think there's so much to be said for making stuff just for yourself. We need to own that. Like, when I cook, I don't cook for other people other than family, and I love that. Like, I don't feel the need for cooking to be in the public sphere for me. But I like my writing and my poetry being in the public sphere. And I think there's stuff that I have to say, which I think, and this took me so long, it's taken me like years of therapy as well to get to this point. The stuff that I have to say that I think people need to hear, and this is the harder bit, that I think they'll enjoy hearing.
Well,
and it's really hard to say that, and like to get to a point where you can say that.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I think that is true. I need to believe that. Yeah. And so yeah, that's why I think I'm writing a novel. I've also just fallen in love. I think novels make sense when you live in a city. I'm now working in an office 5 days a week, which I've never done before. I've always like been remote and stuff. And there's something about the way. Sorry, I'm going on.
No, you're not at all, Simran. Where you're going is beautiful, and like I think keep it like.
Yeah.
So, you're working. You're at this point. You're working in the city, but you're still doing your. Just like carry on.
Well, I guess I realised I was thinking about this the other morning. Reading this really good book called The Art of Fiction by John Gardner, and it's one of those like books which is basically like, here's my opinion on what a novel is for, and here's some mistakes to avoid, and like here's some ideas about how to say what you're trying to say well. And like a lot of it is very helpful, and a lot of it is quite provocative, and you can tell he's kind of poking you, being like, never do this, because he wants you to be like, well, what if I actually do it, but I do it in this way? And he's like, yeah, great, do that, like, but make it work. Anyway, and I've been like reading that. I think for me, I have to find every moment I can to like read or to write or to whatever, because life is tiring. There's so much going on, and like you have to find those little pockets of like 5 minutes on the tube if you can. That's what works for me, right? Everyone has different processes. And I love the fact that you're writing a novel.
But you said something really powerful there, which is like poetry. People don't like hear poems, and I guess, and you could say no to this, right?
Mm-mm.
But is there a piece of poetry that you're particularly proud of that you'd be willing to share in this moment now?
Oh yeah, I could find something. I mean, they're all on my Google Drive, right?
I think get one up.
Yeah,
I think it'd be lovely.
Because
if poetry is like this world we live in, where poetry is, people don't want to open up, don't always appreciate it.
Totally.
I want to hear your poem, and I want to also hear.
That's so kind
I want to
of
hear
you.
what I guess. Tell me the story about this poem and the writing of it, and then I'd love that. If you're down, you don't have to.
I am so happy to do that, because I've taken a while away from performing to focus on this novel, which I love. Like sometimes you have to take. My friend was like, like seeds don't germinate out on a stage. Seeds germinate in like small little dark places, right? And you need to do that. But also I miss performing. I miss being in more connection with people. I was thinking about this literally last night. I was talking to my therapist about it yesterday. Here, let me find. It'll just take me a sec to.
Oh no, thank you.
Find something. No, it would be my pleasure. Okay. Let me think. So options. No, not that one. No, that one's a bit long and doesn't. I think it needs a bit of development. This one is a poem about Eid. I'm not Muslim myself. I have lots of friends who are Muslim. I have a lot of love for like a lot of the spirituality that can emerge through Islam and all kinds of stuff. But this is a poem about going to a friend's house at Eid 3 years ago. And it makes sense because it's Ramadan right now and Eid is in a week, I think. Yeah, I think it's right at the end of the month. There's that one. Oh, there's a kind of love poem to my boyfriend. I'm gonna hold the love poem to my boyfriend for now, because I think you need to sometimes.
Absolutely.
I think that's the way to go. I think it's quite nice too. Let me just. These are new trousers, a little bit tight. It's like still.
You're on the stage.
Well, it's all about you've got to have that diaphragm support.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this poem a lot. It's called Eid al-Fitr, Zad and Charlie's house, 1st May 2022. And yeah, it's about going to a friend's house on the night of Eid a couple of years ago. one of us half Muslim, half Druze, one of us sort of Christian, but in like a very queer, trans way, and me like sort of Sikh, but also very open, I guess, in how I express devotion and faith. And what it meant for the three of us, like all queer people, like to just like sit in this room in Leighton together and like celebrate and I guess like honour something, I don't know. Eid al-Fitr, Zad and Charlie's house, 1st May 2022. Part 1. We cover our heads together and kneel. Which way is east? I touch my forehead to the floor once and wish I had a coin or a flower to give. Zad folds and unfolds themselves over till her shoulders look broader, heart full, skin between their eyes calmed. I made us ghee lamps earlier. The light is warm, a radiator against your back. Charlotte sits upright. I count names of the divine on my fingers. I sing them under my breath. Listen. Two. When we are done, Zad uncovers their hair to say prayer is over. I wrap one of their scarves like a chunni. I don't cover my hair like a man anymore. Read my love poems to God with hair draped over how my mum does instead. How Zad does. Nanak says the Guru is the wind, and today the only teacher is the spaces between me and Zad and Charlotte, Guru as what is flowing between us. Charlotte kneels and Zad folds and unfolds as I bow and count names of our lover on my fingers. Last night Zad took me home from a rave because the ketamine made the sounds too loud. The chunni covers my ears and makes the quiet room quieter. Al-Hay, Al-Hay, living one. We chant a little longer, 3 souls carving out life. I cycle home, go to sleep with smoke from the lamps on my face.
That's beautiful.
Thank you, that's very kind.
Could I ask, so when did you write it? As soon as you got home, or was it?
Do you know? I think that one I did. I think I jotted down notes as soon as I got home that time. Just like on my notes app, a few bits and bobs, and then kind of edited it. It was maybe the weekend or something, it was bank holiday, and I edited it the next day. And then a while later there was a fundraiser, like a Palestine fundraiser, and I kind of edited it and developed it and performed it there for the first time. And then I've not read that in a while, like a year or two.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful, and like, I guess, what emotions does it evoke to you when you're reading it out?
I think for me, quietness. There's something from Sikh poetry, which is Gaviye suniye man rakhiye bao, dukha padhar sukha ghar laye jao, or something like that. And it's like listening, singing, like bringing love to your heart. Sorrow, like suffering, goes far away, and joy comes to your house. And I love that thing of like, we have to sing, and we have to listen. Like you see it in Kirtan, like kind of a lot of like South Asian devotional chant. You see it in Qawwali, you see it in gospel, you see it in like folk music. That like call and response thing. Like one person calls and other people respond, or everyone responds. And there's something in that like singing and listening. It's like you're calling out, and then you realise that it's not about the thing that you're calling out to. It's about like the feeling itself of calling out. That like yearning, like longing. Like the longing is the everything. It's not about the end result. Like the yearning is the thing itself. Because like what that means in very basic terms, like yearning and longing and calling, like that's like love, right? That's you like reaching to something with like this feeling that you can't really put into words. And that's why we write poems, because we can't put it into words, right? Or maybe we can, but and that's what like the listening is. And I think I've spent a lot of time in my life like calling, and like trying to find some relationship of like love with the world and with the people around me. And I think what I've learned to do recently is also to listen, like to like throw the love out, and also to be like, you can't just keep running and throwing, you have to stop. And you have to see that like, not to tear up, but you have to see that you're also loved, right? And sometimes if you're lucky, or I'd like to believe that this is true for many of us, or that it's the world that we should live in, where this is true of all of us, that we are loved, and like we can live in ways that where we're really deeply cared for, in like material ways, right? In like being able to like have a house that's safe, and a workplace that treats you well, or maybe even being able to live without a workplace, but and friends around you who see you.
Yeah. I guess, and you don't have to answer this, have you ever not felt loved in life?
Yeah, I think so. But I think all of us, I think many, yeah, I've definitely not felt loved in life. I don't know if that's because I wasn't loved, or because I was just very afraid, and feeling not loved was a way to navigate that. I think often we think it's the end of the world to not feel loved. And maybe it is, and sometimes it is. And I think how we meet grief and that sadness, I'm still working it out. But I know that I'm somewhere I am in my life where I can like wake up and live, and most of the time do the things I want to do, and be there for the people I want to be there for. And it brings me back to what I was saying about those birthday parties I throw, right? Yeah. In many ways, those are like an object lesson for me, to be like, shut the fuck up, like, you idiot, you're so loved, right? And like, my friends don't need me to cook a whole thing of shahi paneer and make a really elaborate, masala char with whiskey and da-da-da. They don't need that. They like that, I'm pretty sure they do. But it's quite confronting sometimes to see how much your friends love you. And I think that's why birthday parties are so important, because it's you choosing to invite people over to be like, hey, could you come over so we can celebrate, and so I can be, you're not going to say so I can be reminded of how much you love me, but you're kind of saying that, you're reaching out, right? So surprise birthdays are so good, because sometimes it's hard to do that and you need someone else to do it for you, right? And you most of the time know they're doing it anyway, right? Surprise birthdays, in my opinion, are mostly fake, right? You generally know it's happening. But yeah, that's why birthday parties are so important, because they remind you that you're loved, and you're opting into seeing that. It's like consensual, your friends forcing you to remember that they love you.
That is so brilliant.
You know what I mean?
No. I'm so there with you, Simran, on that. And I love it. It's such a beautiful analogy on like birthday parties and the real birthday parties. I have to ask you, what is the surprise party that you've had arranged for you?
Do you know, I don't know if I've ever actually had it. Maybe I have, maybe when I was small. I don't know if I've ever had a surprise birthday. But I tend to take the initiative on my birthdays anyway. Maybe if I didn't take the initiative, someone would organise a surprise for me, but I kind of don't give them the chance, right? But I like organising my own birthdays. Have I planned surprise? I've helped plan surprise birthday parties. Yeah. No, I don't think I've ever had a surprise birthday. No, that's
okay. I guess you earlier you mentioned grief. And and you don't have to answer this, but I guess what is that grief? When you were saying that, what did you mean, I guess?
I think that's a really good question. And I think it's a question I've been asking myself a lot. I think in recent years, through having like more like stability and structure and like contentment in my life generally, and through having a great therapist, as well as, great friends and family and that kind of stuff, I've been like really looking at how I like look after the grief that I have. I believe we all are carrying some kind of grief. I think in the world we live in, or like firstly, not to be kind of very Buddhist about this, but like suffering is real. Suffering is part of life. People get sick and loss happens and this stuff happens, right? And we've all, that's touched some of us somehow in some way. But also, I think very many of us, if not all of us, grow up hoping the world will be one way, and it's not, right? I think grief is deeply political. There's a beautiful book by Gargi Bhattacharya called We, the Heartbroken, and it's very short. I love a short book.
Yeah.
And it argues that we can't build the world that we deserve, right? Like a world that isn't built on exploitation, whether that's about like class or race or like imperialism, right? We can't build the world that we all deserve, where we're free of these systems of violence and exploitation, without grieving. And this is where my memory is a bit foggy, but like, I guess to my reading, like, without grieving what the world could have been and should have been. Like, grief points us in the direction of what is good. Grief is, for me, tied so closely to hope. It's really hard to be hopeful when you're frozen. Grief overwhelms you and you freeze. And then if you can find a way or be given what you need to, like for me, sadness is always very liquid. It's like it kind of melts, right? So it's something my therapist said to me. Monday's therapy day, so Tuesday he's always on my mind, right?
Yeah.
But like through grief, we kind of like melt through all of those like senses of blockages and freezings. And yeah, it sucks. You're like, yeah, it should have been that way, and it shouldn't have been that way, and this shouldn't have happened, and there's nothing I could have done to have stopped that, maybe. And you feel your way through that, and then you're like, oh, okay, I feel okay now. And that helps me to remember like how it could be. I'm not explaining that very well, but grief and hope are very closely tied together for me, and we need to give ourselves the things we need to feel our grief safely and kindly. For me, I think that often means doing it with other people. You don't have to grieve by yourself. Maybe sometimes you do, and that really sucks. But
I guess it, and you really don't need to answer this, but like, I guess, is there a point in your life that you're particularly thinking of?
this is the thing. I know there are specific things that are linked to like feelings of grief. You know, like losing my grandparents, and I think experiences I had around coming out, right? Experiences I have occasionally around like racism, right? In one form or another. I think right now the grief that is most present in my mind doesn't feel like it's my grief. I had this really strong feeling. I was listening to that Rachel Riri's, I think that's how you say her name. She's amazing. That song, All I Ever Asked. And she's kind of basically saying in that song, like, I was just asking for a bit more time. It's not that much. And I was listening to it walking home, and I saw this little girl, I guess like probably South Asian descent, standing there crying with her hands like this. And I was like, oh, I don't know why, but I feel you. We're on the same page. And then I had this sudden like image, which is totally made up, of my granddad on a plane touching down into Heathrow. And like I imagined him, and I was like, what would it feel like leaving all of your family and all of your friends behind, landing in this country? You don't know what it's going to be like. You've cut he and all of my family had turbans for many years. You've cut your hair, which is a huge thing. There's a grief in that for me. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe he didn't care at all. I don't know. But touching down and looking at this country and being like, what have I lost? And I think we have such a discourse sometimes where it's like, well, what have you gained by coming here? Yeah, okay, sure, absolutely. But what did he lose? And did he have the chance to process that grief? I don't think so. He was an amazing man, did a lot of things, but I don't think he had a lot of time to process that. Did my dad? I don't know. Maybe now. I don't think so. So who does it fall to meet that grief? And I think often it falls to this next generation where we have safety, right? Like, I'm like financially secure, right? And I have the security and stability that like generations before, that my granddad didn't have, right? Yeah, I think some of the grief that I'm working through isn't my grief. It's grief that has been like shared with me. And there's a grief in the fact that that had to happen. There's a grief in the fact that my dad couldn't grieve it. If he did, maybe that's not, true. And there's a grief in the fact that that's had to come down to me. And I feel like I have space to meet that. And that's a lot. But to know that I'm turning 30 this year, to know that I'm in a stage in my life where I can look at these griefs, and meet them honestly, and maybe not know exactly who they are or whose they are or where they've come from, but that I can still be like, hi, yeah, you deserve to be looked after. Like the little girl with her hands like this crying, her dad looked like he didn't know what to do, and I get that. What do you do? Maybe he didn't know what to do. I don't know. But like, she deserves to be given what she needs in that moment, or at least to know that someone's trying. And I feel the same about the grief that we're given. Whatever it is, even if we don't know what it is or what it's saying or where it comes from, it deserves to be held.
Yeah.
Meeting grief means being active in the world, and trying to build the world that is without the things that cause that grief. Whatever that means for you.
I completely hear you, and I think that's like
Yeah.
so beautifully put, Simran. And it's like you've got such a obviously you've got such a poetic way of summing up those feelings, and like what a beautiful answer to what is that grief, because I completely understood where.
Could I share, I don't like giving advice normally, but could I share one piece of advice about grief? And the only thing I would ever say about grief, I think you have to, is grief has always been easier for me around people. Like, just, full stop, that's the end of the sentence. Grief has always been easier for me around people. And the way that I found it easiest to find people, especially in the city, who I can meet my grief with and also meet joy with and just live well with, has been through what there's this writer called Sivan Undan, an amazing anti-racist theorist and organizer and activist. But he says, he talks about communities of resistance, right? A friend of mine organizes renters, right? Because it's a nightmare, right? Trying to rent in the city. And I see that work is so important because it's really, really valuable to changing the way that people live and rent in the city. And it's so valuable because it builds communities of people around you who have your back.
Yeah.
And who can face up to the horrible things in the world with you and alongside you, in practical terms and in emotional terms. So for me, what has helped more than anything else in terms of navigating grief, having a great therapist, undeniably, having a great partner and friends, and
good
where
birthday
I can,
parties.
Good birthday parties, 100%. And more than anything else, where I can, and I feel like I need to be doing more always, but doing stuff with other people to really address the root causes of what is fundamentally wrong in our world and trying to do something about it. Joining a union. Basically, how to deal with grief, join a union. That's my hot take. We all really, really deserve to be looked after. And that's something between us as people. And it's something that needs us to organise in very real political terms to build. Yeah. There's a direct continuum for me of, making a cup of tea is the ultimate act of looking after someone, right? But there's a direct continuum from that to joining a picket line. That's what I'd say. That's what I've learned.
That's great. I love it. I love it. I love what you've got to share, Simran, about it all. You have such a skill as well with your poetry and your book writing, and I just wish you good luck with
That's
that
so
and wherever you go with that.
Thank you.
It's just thank you so much for taking part in this. I guess I kind of know the answer to this question, but maybe I don't. What makes you happier?
Oh, that's a great question. First, thank you so much for this. This was really nice. I love to talk. So, and I'm so excited about it. I can't wait to see this. I can't believe I've not seen your videos because I spend a lot of time on TikTok.
To be honest, when I first went up to you, I thought you were acting like you hadn't seen my videos.
Oh no, fully. I had actually, which is weird because it's very strange, and I can't wait to watch them. I'm really sorry.
No,
really rude.
Not to say in a big-headed way, but I was it's the reason you said yes straight away because you have seen them.
No, fully. I'm very open with this. I work in content, right? So I'm very flexible with these things. But what makes me happy though? I love moving my body, and I'm almost not that picky about it, but just movement. And movement could be anything, right? It could be this walk that I was on right now. It could be sex. It could be dancing. It could be just running around your flat with my boyfriend or whatever, just dancing and being silly, or it could be going out. I love rock climbing. Rock climbing I love so much, and since I started working in office 5 days a week, I can't do it as much, but I used to climb 3 or 4 times a week indoors and go on climbing holidays, mostly bouldering. I love it so much. It's the best. It's just the most beautiful thing in the world. I adore it. Outdoor climbing, one of my happiest memories ever was being on Dartmoor with a whole bunch of friends. Actually, the 2 friends in that poem among them, and the dad of one of them. And this kind of, basically a storm had come into Dartmoor, and we were up on, these big old kind of cliff faces, right? And Charlie's dad was teaching us how to like do like a very basic intro to trad, which is, you know, when you're basically, it's just you and your little hooks, which you get into the rock and you kind of work your way up, basically, you know, various ways. And I loved that so much. It was pouring with rain. I was wearing this like thin waterproof and some shorts. And I was drenched through with these like little metal hooks and whatchamacallit. I'm not a trad climber, so I don't know much about it. With all these little metal hooks. Everyone else was sheltering in a cave, looking absolutely miserable. Charlie's dad was basically trying to force one person to finish their climb because he was like, "You need to know how to climb in the rain. What are you going to do when you're halfway up a route and the storm comes in?" And I don't know if they're having a great time. And then I was just running around, and I had this real image of me, like, knowing I was like buzzing and glowing, and like turning around, like turning back to my friends, looking miserable. This bunch of like London queers in a cave, very outdoorsy, but London queers in a cave, miserable, and just being like, they're just looking at me like, what the fuck is going on? And they took a picture of me, and it's one of my favourite pictures of myself that there is. Yeah.
And that is,
That's
you
what makes me happy.
need to make sure you do more climbing then.
Yeah,
Even in your job.
I absolutely do.
And how are you going to resolve this conflict? Final thing.
You know, I'll listen, I'll talk to my boss, and I'll just try and work it out. It'll be fine. Work is work. Work can't consume all of life. Work must just be work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Simran, thank you so ridiculously much for like taking your lunch break. I probably like whatever, like you've been.
This was a delight. Thank you.
No.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes these conversations turn into like the most beautiful things. Like you get teleported out of a bench and you get teleported into your life, and like it's the most beautiful and like honourable like thing to be given the opportunity. So yeah, thank you for just taking the time to say yeah. Like I can't wait to see where your writing goes and your novel and stuff, because that is just exciting and amazing.
That's so kind of you. It was so nice to meet you. I feel like I just talked at you this whole time. I wish I got to hear more about you and about everything you're doing. It was so nice to meet you.
No,
yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you.
Thank you so much for the cup of tea as well. And for everything. That's a really beautiful question. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
I should really go to work.
Right, have a good day.
Late on my lunch break. Yeah, it was so nice.
Have a lovely day, and good luck with all your poetry and books. Thank you. Bye. What a guy, Simran. That's amazing. Oh, you're such a good guy. When things go like that, when you have a teacher like that, you're like, it just feels magical. That sounds so lame, but it does.